Hello and welcome back to Building Tomorrow's Insurer, the podcast where we explore how the industry is transforming from the inside out. I'm your host, Nigel Fellowes-Freeman, the founder and CEO of Canopy, and today I could not be more excited to be joined by someone who is truly at the coalface of insurance recovery, and that is none other than Sam Ratcliff, who's the COO or Chief Operating Officer at InsureBuild. That has been a couple of decades of experience in spanning insurers, loss adjusters, TPA firms, and is now very much at the heart of leading one of Australia's largest specialised insurance repairers, and is seen very much firsthand how disaster recovery really works, and where it works and then where it doesn't. And so, Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to kind of getting down to the details and really understanding how this part of the value chain comes together.
No, excellent, Nigel. Thanks so much for having me on this podcast and reaching out. I'm pretty excited to get into the thick of things.
You let's just jump straight in. You have spent a long time in the industry, and I like to kind of kick this off with, how did you get into it? Everyone has a slightly different way in. Often people fall in from family ties. How did you find yourself in the insurance sector?
Yeah, definitely. You worry me when you say it's been 2 decades, because it literally has been 2 decades, and I still consider myself as a young insurance professional, but I think I might be skipping that boat as the days go on. Yeah, I sort of started started in the industry at the young age of 18 in insurance, which not many people do. And I was following in my uncle's footsteps. He was part of the Promenade Group back then. It looked fun. He never used to say it was fun, but then it sounded like a challenge. So following his footsteps, I jumped straight into the claims space at IAG. Started off in that motor claims sort of specialty area.
Yeah, super interesting. Super interesting. And now, Sam, obviously we were meant to record this podcast a few days ago, but I know that you did you took part in the CEO Sleep Out, obviously, which is for those of you listening that don't know, it's an organisation. Sam, please don't kind of bring any more insight in here, but it's very much to help fight homelessness. It's like the primary part of it. And super interested, obviously, with what motivated you to participate, like, and how has maybe the experience may shape your perspective on maybe housing vulnerability and maybe your work even more so like InsureBuild.
Yeah, definitely. I've done it now for 4 years. I would say I was lucky enough to do it in Sydney for the first 3 years, and maybe not so lucky to do it in Melbourne this year. What CEO Sleep Out is, for the audience listening in, is obviously you raise money that goes to St Vincent de Paul's through many of your means and your networks, and then one night in winter you sleep out in the cold. So you can only bring a sleeping bag and a pillow, and you just sleep sort of in a factory or some location that they've got. In Sydney, it's normally in Sydney Harbour, which it sounds very cold, but Sydney's a warmer place than Melbourne. This year in Melbourne, it was 5 degrees. I remember looking at my app, and it said it feels like 2. I said that the app's a lie. It felt like -10 at that stage. But yeah, it was a very challenging experience. How it starts is normally you learn a bit more about Vinnies. You go through they had a big entrance and a presentation, and then you hear from people that have experienced homelessness firsthand. We were joined by a young lad who, because of his vulnerabilities, could not get financial support at all, was homeless at the age of 17. And without that financial support, he couldn't get a job. And by no means of himself was homeless for a good 5 years. He now owns a pretty big company, but it hadn't been for the help from Vinnies that they gave him back then, he wouldn't be in the position that he was today. Proud to say that event in Victoria alone raised 1.4 million and counting, so it's still growing. The event across the nation raises normally $8 to $10 million per year. This year, Vinnies Victoria, they will be donating all the money that we raise through to help their vans, so their food vans that they drop around. And every day, I think there was something like they provided 500,000 meals last year or more. That's just in Victoria. So the money we raised is going to go through to their Berwick division to start some new vans there to get around to the homeless community that are disadvantaged around those areas.
Super important. Well, look, Really appreciate you taking that time. It's a super important cause, and it's wonderful to hear those kind of inspirational stories, right? This kind of really brings it to life in terms of the meaning of the funds that you raised.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, and anyone that's participating, don't put your cardboard box up near an aircon vent. It might seem good because it blocked out the winds, but as I learnt at 2:30, that aircon vent can come on when someone turns on the aircon, knock off your cardboard box, and then it does feel like -10. So there's a bit of a tip to the audience this time for any people that are looking to participate in the next few years.
I appreciate this, Sam. We'll definitely clip that one and put that out to make sure everyone knows. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper.
Yep.
Go a little bit deeper into InsureBuild. And so this is maybe a part of the value chain that not everybody understands very deeply, I don't think. And I think it's an area, a part of the value chain that's obviously incredibly important, and if done well, I think is very impactful. And so, can you maybe talk to me a little bit about InsureBuild itself? What makes you different, maybe from other players in the market, and how you're like carving out your specific niche?
Yeah, definitely. InsureBuild started 30 years ago by a gentleman with the name of Stuart Patterson. We were formerly known as Patterson's InsureBuild prior to the name change this year. Started as an insurance builder inside of Victoria. Over 5 to 6 years, he expanded the business to service in all states and territories, bar Northern Territory. Insurance building is an interesting one. We're normally at the coalface. So as you can imagine, the claims ecosystem, a claim is lodged with an insurer. That insurer at the start will then allocate out to a builder or a loss adjuster, and that loss adjuster will then allocate through us. Our job is unique where when we talk about being the first at site, we need to be the first at site. So unlike your motor vehicle that has an accident, you can probably go into the next day to the smash repair. Smash repairs aren't open at 5 p.m. But if you can imagine your house right now gets a leak, catches on fire, we need to be there within the first hour. So already there's that pressure. And the businesses that do it well, such as InsureBuild, we pride ourselves in being able to get out to site all across Australia in the postcodes that we service within the first hour. Now you can imagine it might be a make safe. So we talk about a leaky pipe that's filled your house full of water. So the first step is mitigation and safety. So we need to isolate power mains. We need to make sure that the water is extracted to a point where it's not going to grow mold in the future. So that's sort of the first couple of hours of a make safe. And then we go into the quoting and policy response.
Can I jump in there? Because that's just super interesting what you just said. And I was just thinking while you were talking, the infrastructure required to be able to get to any site within an hour, that feels like a pretty substantial network to be able to do that. Can you kind of dig into that a little bit? Because that feels you're probably a little light on there. I reckon that's probably like harder and bigger than you kind of called out.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got 1,700 subcontractors in the postcodes that we service. And when we talk subcontractors, they might be organizations. So we might say a carpentry organization. They might have 30 employees that we subcontract out. So our job is to continue to run that ecosystem. So they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're available at the drop of a hat. And Nigel, you mentioned it's no easy feat. You can imagine if a call comes in at 2 a.m., some people might still be in bed. You've got to try and organise a plumber at 2 a.m. Now, being an ordinary person, you can imagine trying to organise a plumber for your house. It could take a month when you're doing renovations or something along those lines. Where we specialise is we can have that plumber to your house to sort that leak at 2 a.m. on Christmas Day to make sure that your vulnerabilities are gone. So we're matching and getting people out there straight away to bring down that heightened sense of emotion.
Amazing. And do you need a big technology platform to be able to do that, Sam? That feels like the orchestration, all of those folks nationally feels like a pretty hard technical problem. Like, have you got, obviously, I imagine you guys have gone pretty kind of deep on the technical side. Can you bring any of that to light?
Yeah, definitely, Nigel. I normally wear glasses. These are contacts, by the way. So I'm a bit of a tech nerd. Please don't judge me for that for the audience listening today. But we sort of went on a journey 3 years ago. We knew that if we look back at the building industry 20 plus years ago, it was that phone calls were the be all and end all. So one party would call, so the claims office would call the builder would then call his subcontractors. But even if you get all that right, you cannot be operating that first hour. You are not mitigating that loss. So what we had to do was then really look at our platform and our delivery 3 years ago. And in true InsureBuild fashion, we don't want to meet the competition. We want to excel. So we looked at what platforms can we bring in to really automate that. So we've got a custom built system. We call it POPS. It's not my age and how long I've been in the industry go over that name. It's our operating platform system. So Patterson's operating platform system. What that does is, and then we've got a bunch of insurers, right? Because they've got to fit into this ecosystem. Now, with the developing world, we don't just have your large globals, your IAGs, your Suncorps of the world. We're seeing a lot more plays in sort of the underwriting agencies. So you might have a business that has just started up that doesn't have the platforms that you've got to try and tap in. So it's all well and good that I say, well, I can tap into any API, give me the right hook. We've got you covered, but that doesn't work for these smaller agencies. Some of them might still be using pen and paper or just emails and they paper file stuff. So we then looked at our ecosystem to, I call it dirty mop head philosophy. So if you were to mop your floors at home for the next 5 weeks, what ends up happening is you get the mop becomes really, really tangled. And then to untangle that, you could sit there for the next 6 years. So what we sort of developed is a plug and play sort of platform where anything can plug into it. Doesn't matter what type of customer you have, we can plug into that. And then we started looking at RPA technology. So we talk about RPA, and I know a lot of the tech forums will say RPA is out. It's everything's API to direct connect. Well, when you're dealing with a range of customers, I challenge any IT person to be able to build that without using RPA. So we've now got, I think, something like 41 robots that work 24/7. And what they do is they custom build that connection piece, because our job as an insurance builder is to ensure that communication from all parties is there on a fast and agile way. And my robots never call up sick. So this RPA technology, they're there 24/7, and they do a lot of that old admin stuff, so we can just spend more time with the customers. So you can imagine if an underwriting agency was to lodge a claim, they send through an email saying, hey, here's a new job. It's an emergency make safe. Our robots then are out there. They read the make safe form. They say, right, this needs a carpentry make safe. They send a text to the insured saying, we've got your job. This is in the first minute, mind you. They allocate a carpenter. They've also already sent through a booking list to say, hey, when's your next available appointment for our estimator to come and attend? All in the space of that first 30 seconds. So we enable people that might not be digitally sound to become digitally sound by utilizing our services. It's pretty exciting. The average, I think our average response time, and we're starting to see 60 to 70% traction on automatic means rather than telephones. Because people they don't have time to answer calls, and because of how many calls are coming through, they always think it's a spam call. No matter if they've lodged a claim or not, they would rather do things via text messages or ways of portals. So we've sort of really specialized in that tech space, but we don't take away that every customer is different. And this is where I talk about the right business model by having RPA technology and that sort of stuff. If we just went down API route and everything has to be digital, we don't do things by phones, we're going to isolate so many customers, and we don't want to do that. We look at those that are maybe above 70 who don't have access to a smartphone. They still need service too. So how do we support them? We still use paper mail. We still drop estimators to people's houses to drop off their paperwork so they can sign it. So we've built our whole tech ecosystem surrounding customers' needs rather by what is the cheapest cost for us, if that sort of makes sense, because all these value-add services such as Australia Post, they all cost money, but we're not going to isolate those customers. They deserve just as much respect as a tech-savvy 20-year-old who's clicking on links to get his house repaired.
Yeah, super interesting. And with the kind of RPA tech, Sam, you had an agentic AI specialist on the pod last week, and we spoke quite a lot around RPA and kind of RPA's like potential next evolution, and kind of how RPAs are like unbelievably great at like fixed workflows like we've just spoken about there, and then like the agentic layers are a little bit more like decision making. Have you guys started to look at that at all? Have you started to think about how any of these generative AI and agentic workforces and workflows can potentially help the business?
Yeah, definitely. So we've started looking by employing these
Mm.
robots. We started to really look into, well, they need to pull work from somewhere, so something's got to trigger it. Well, why do we they need to pull work? Why can't they look for work like I would, like an ordinary person would? So we've really started to look at that next step where we've got robots that sit behind people that are watching what they do and how they interact with the system, actually learning. So it's machine learning, and then they will be
Wow.
deployed. I would say in the next 3 to 6 months, a lot of the admin will be constructed so somebody can just stay there on the phone while these robots are working for them in front of them, but they've actually learned themselves. And then the next piece that we want to sort of look at is what drives them to get work? Why aren't they looking? So why don't we have a bot that manages the bots to say, hey, this isn't working effective, or I need to do this, or you've got a backlog of here, process this. So we actually are looking at that next evolution of, right, let's get the right technology that actually self-trains itself and self-learns rather than us having to code new things to say, hey, do this task when this comes up. It should actually automatically build those sort of dynamics behind the
Super
scenes.
interesting. And Sam, how does your maybe excuse my naivety, but I think sometimes this is successful because I ask stupid questions. In terms of like a
Yeah.
business model from InsureBuild, is your customer the insurer? Is your customer, or is the insured your customer? Like, how does your business model fit together?
I would say everyone's
Yeah.
our customer. It's really interesting, right? So we talk about the difference between a customer and a
Hmm.
client. I know they sound like two of the similar words, and you go to any fast food chains and they could be their clients and customers. But I would say our client base is insurers, the ones that give us work and loss adjusters, whereas our customer, our end user, the most important part of sort of the sales process is that end user, the person's house that you're repairing, is what we deem as our customer.
Got it. Makes sense. So yeah, the a little bit. There's a little actually a little like I guess Canopy is a good example here, which is like our true customer is the insurer, i.e. we provide our service and our platform to them, but it's really
Yep.
used to give a service to that end customer. And so kind of similar to that, we think very, very similarly to you, which is how important everything we build has to have that insured in mind, because they're the person that's going to be experiencing and really getting the value out of the platform.
Yeah, it's really when you start building ecosystems for systems. I think where we go wrong a lot of the times is, and in my first couple of career choices that I made and ways that I've learned from, it's I always built what was the best model, not what the customer needs. And when you build this fantastic model, you can have the best system in the world. If no one's using it, is it really the best system? And you sort of ponder yourself that question. Whereas if you build it for a customer and you learn saying, well, this was my experience, this was my frustration. All right, let me fix that in the next integration of my build. So our system's always custom built by what the customer and the clients are
Yeah,
saying.
super interesting. And when you think about the claims full life cycle, and you think about like QA, quality assurance, risk, is there any big misconceptions about the claims repair process that it's you want to get on your soapbox and say this is wrong? Don't think about it like this. Is there any big misconceptions?
I think understanding of what a builder does would be a misconception. And I know that sounds really interesting, but if I take the quality assurance piece, so we've currently got 7 states and territories in Australia. Does every person understand that they operate completely different by 7 different governing bodies? Each state requires a different license. Now we talk a subcontractor. So if I've got an electrician, a painter, and a plasterer on site, each one of those needs their own license inside that state that needs to be active. So the messaging is, well, it's really easy. I just allocate a building and get the job done. Well, did you know that I have to check 1,700 licenses every year, 1,700 lots of insurances just for these organisations? So I think it's what an actual builder does. We've got to get all the parties together and really communicate seamlessly by building a plan for that insured. That would probably be one of the biggest misconceptions, is just you're allocating one party who's doing all the work. Well, no, there's subcontractors that go because you've got specialized equipment or specialized trades.
And if you think about the continuing evolution of natural disasters, especially here in Australia, and they
Yep.
are happening more, they're happening with bigger intensity. with you being, you've just mentioned at the kind of coal face of when claim incidents occur, you'd wanting to get there very quickly. Do you see your role like evolving when you're thinking about this kind of evolving catastrophe response ecosystem, like these events that happen, and how you can play a really important role in them?
Yeah, definitely. If we look at the last Royal Commission that happened, the way that we handle a catastrophe event, including insurers, is completely different to when you look at it 2 years ago. So if we have a look at Kempsey and Taree, the recent floods that occurred there, we were on site within 24 hours, but we had to be on site. There was already a community forum already done within the first 24 hours, but we had to attend to show our presence. Completely different ways of looking at things, from everything from temporary accommodation to how we support. Long gone are the days where you can rebuild a community that can take 2 years. That's not acceptable. You need to have a target of 70% of these places repaired within a short time frame. And if we look at some of the challenging communities, what we're seeing is some of these catastrophe events are happening in communities where the population is not high. And I know Kempsey and Taree were sort of lucky, but if you look at Western Queensland, the floods that occurred there, some of these towns have a population of 1,500. Now, you can imagine trying to get a restorer that's available there, a painter and plasterer. They don't have access to that. So you've got to bring those sort of trades in, but then you're pulling from another region. So these are all the changes that the industry, and the industry is doing a really good job at changing it, ensuring that we can support these communities when an event strikes. But there is a lot more standardized reporting, a lot more community engagement that we're seeing, which we absolutely love. We planned for this sort of 3 years ago. That's why we built our technology platforms the way that we did, because long gone are the days where I'm sitting at home doing a report up until 2 a.m. Instead, I'm at Taree at the local shops talking to insureds. That's where I see my role. Whereas before, if I look back 3 years ago, I was typing reports for insurers to say, here's your report. This is how many jobs we've repaired. That's all gone now, because we've got the technology that enables me to be on site talking to these people and giving them that added peace of mind.
Sam, bear with me. I'm going to take a little step left here. When I was watching all of the news that was coming out of California, when you had the Californian fires, a big part of some of the reports I was reading about was around the repair process, how there was a lack of trades, etc., to be able to get into California and make the build and rebuild all the homes, and also the regulation, which it would take a long time to get through regulation to even start to rebuild the homes. Is there anything? Have you got any views on that? Have you got any kind of views? And then is there anything like that exists here in Australia in terms of? Is sometimes you just mentioned that like kind of small little kind of village that's only got 1,000 folks, like getting the trades in and then the regulatory approval to do builds, etc. Is that same kind of dynamic something that happens here?
It is, to a lesser or different extent. Sorry, not a lesser extent, a different extent. So if we, and look, I don't know too much about the US legislation, but if we have a look at the earthquakes and what happened over in New Zealand as a good example versus Australia, a lot of the New Zealand policies, they're backed on a cash settlement, or they're not really your repair process, although some did get repaired. A lot of them were cash settled and then they just moved towns. Where in Australia, what you see is the repair process is higher. At the end of an event, if you are opt to take a cash settlement, you actually get a fact sheet inside of Australia that tells you your rights and legislation behind taking the cash settlement. So what we sort of see in Australia is a high majority of those sort of jobs are through the repair process rather than a cash settlement. The sum insured's phenomenal. The way that policy responds to sum insured inside of Australia is phenomenal. Whereas in New Zealand, you're looking at damages that will exceed your sum insured straight away. So I think the Australian government's done a really good job in ensuring a fair process for Australian policyholders versus other countries. You look at Californian bushfires. I was reading articles. They're multi-millionaires and billionaires that live in these sort of things. Hugely underinsured. So a lot of them aren't ever going to get back into the same property ever again. They'll probably just sell the land to another person or go and put a completely different house on there. Whereas I don't foresee that ever happening inside of Australia. There's just too much rules and regulations. And the Australian community does a really good job behind that, regulating that industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that we do a good job here and leading the world. That's a wonderful thing to hear. Sam, look, with InsureBuild, you guys recently brought together a bunch of insurance. I was doing some reading before the pod, and I think you brought together kind of 45 industry professionals to support rural aid. I was interested to kind of what motivated the initiative and how does that purpose kind of tie in with the InsureBuild and your kind of mission?
Yeah, definitely. We look at it, everyone in the insurance world loves a good lunch, Nigel. Every single person loves to go to these great lunches. But how can we actually give back whilst having lunch? So it's always well and good you and I catch up for coffee. Well, there has to be a meaning or a purpose behind it. So our marketing team, alongside our business development professionals, we said, right, no more lunches unless there's a purpose. So they've designed this give back lunches. So what we do is it's called Lunch for a Purpose. We have a lunch, and all the proceeds from that lunch go to that charity for the day. So we were lucky enough to be joined by 45 people, including the CEO of the ICA, as well as the CEO of Rural Affinity. From that, we've got a very big network. We feed a lot of mouths inside InsureBuild, being one of the largest inside of Australia. So for that month, we also go out to our trade partners to say donate. Really proud that one lunch inside of Queensland generated $18,000 for a charity that was supporting regional farmers inside of Australia. So what you'll see a lot more from InsureBuild, and if you go on our page and have a look, is a lot more charity events. We want to get really heavily involved in the community. We all live in nice houses, that sort of stuff, because the community we live in. So we really want to start giving back to a lot of those options. So you'll see stuff like CEO Sleep Out, these charity lunches that organise. We also do every single month a different charity of the month, which is phenomenal and something I love. A couple of months ago, we did a disabled school. So they're a school for the disability community. And it could be something as simple as it was the hopscotch. I don't know, did you play hopscotch in your day?
I sure did. Well, I tried it. I was never that coordinated at hopscotch, if I'm being honest, Sam, but I always gave it a go.
So I was one of those nerds that was playing Pokemon, so I was in with the cool kids playing hopscotch. But we just recently, for a school, St. Lucy's, we did that charity of the month. The money raised went to build them a hopscotch stenciling and that sort of stuff. So we can actually, we actually see the community taking advantage of the stuff that we're giving back to.
So I'm taking a little step away from InsureBuild for now and actually looking more at the claims part of the value chain. And obviously we talk on the pod here about like building tomorrow's insurer and like what is the insurer of the future going to look like, and this part of the value chain is obviously incredibly important. How are you thinking, how are you seeing it's changing? How are you seeing the claims part of the life cycle start to change? And if you were to glance forward over the next maybe 3 to 5 years, how the changes that have started now, how are they going to kind of materialize over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, definitely. I think anytime you look at it, so if I was to take the last 3 years, we've seen more development changes than the last 3 before that. And the growth is just accelerating. It's not a linear sort of growth. We're seeing growth that is just like a hockey stick, like it goes up in accordance with the technology. If I look back at my career 20 years ago, everything was paper files. So you were running motor vehicle claims with paper files, and to get something paid, you'd go up to your team leader and they get this big stamp that says paid, and they'll tick it once you did your paper files. That's exactly how it worked. And then it quickly evolved into you actually don't even make payments anymore. So once the repair's finished, the payment's automatically done to that supplier. So we've seen that sort of transformation, and it's gone from paper phone-based to more online. It's interesting, we looked at the cycle sort of how an insurer does stuff, and if we look back 5 years, apps were the key word. So what you would see is anyone will pick up a phone and they'll download an app from an app store. This is very topical, and I'm surprised the community listening to this YouTube today, or this short clip, is going to challenge me on this, but nobody wants to download an app these days. They would rather do things by links and hyperlinks. I know I don't sit there downloading apps, otherwise my whole homepage will be 50 to 100 apps. So we've seen insurers move away from download this app to manage a claim. Well, you have a claim once in your lifetime sometimes. why are you going to download an app just to manage that, to now here's a hyperlink to lodge your claim online. So we're seeing the development of the amount of transactions that are occurring online without having to call people is a lot more. I remember back 6-7 years ago inside of insurance, we had 1-touch and light touch and 10-touch claims. And they were the claims teams that you were in. These days, I would say 70% of it would be no touch. You can actually have a motor vehicle accident and get your vehicle repaired without ever touching a claims officer, by streamlining that process. And although you can't have that sort of stuff inside of a building industry, we believe that we can isolate the amount of touch points that are there to keep the customers happy.
Sam, what you just said was so it used to be all HTML5, so yours would be all in the browser, and then we get no, it needs to be all in an app. And it's so interesting to hear that we're going back to go no, let's go back to the browser. The browser's the place to be. Let's go away from the apps. And I get that though. I do understand the frequency of requiring the thing. Do you really want to download your IAG or Suncorp claims app that you have to then is that really what you want to do, or actually do you just want to make a claim and you don't have to have any extra things in there to more requirements on mental load on you and your phone, etc., to go through. That's so interesting into that development.
We've become so lazy that we can't be bothered going into an app store to download
I get it, though.
an
It's
app. But it's phenomenal,
it's all
right?
Time, right? We care about time. That's what we care about.
Yeah. And we look back, I think the biggest change in technology infrastructure, COVID changed the world for, I know it sounds like it's a horrible item, but it changed the technology landscape more than anything that I've ever seen before. Before that, we sent a lot more phone calls, whereas now nobody wants to jump on the phone and call and wait around in the queue, to the point where we've just released live chat. So everyone started using Teams and Zooms, and it was the coolest thing ever. Whereas most of our staff now communicate over Teams, so they don't even talk to the person next to them. If you're next to that person, you'll still send them a Teams message so you can continue your job. So we had to look at that and think, well, how do we engage our clientele? So we've actually got Teams available for any insured out there that can actually Teams message us, because they're so used to using those sort of platforms during COVID that let's open it up to the customer base. Well, I can just go on live chat now and message your online claims team inside of a builder. Who would have thought?
Absolutely love it. Sam, I can literally talk to you all day, but I'm going to ask you one more question, and that is, we're having this podcast we're going to go a little bit further out. We're going to go 10 years into the future. I know that's a very big jump. 10 years in the future, you and me are sat down having this pod. We're talking about claims today. What do you think is going to be the most fundamental change and shift that we will see in specifically the claims and repairing part of the value chain of insurance?
Yeah, I feel you're going to see a lot more AI-driven claims handling. So what does that look like, and how does that feel? For me, we talk about how many touches we make on a job or a transaction. Moving forward, that will be automated. And if I look just inside of our building industry, we're going to be probably the first insurance builder to release this. But we look at our competitors like Uber. Uber Eats, you ever order food. If you look back 5 years ago at Uber Eats, before Uber Eats was a big thing, or maybe 10 years ago, you'd have to call your local Chinese restaurant, and then you'd be calling them 3 times to say, hey, it's been 45 minutes, where's my food? Then they released this Wham Bam app. We'll go back to the app piece, but you can actually follow your driver. Well, why don't we have that for the insurance building arm? And we're about to release that in the next sort of 3 months, where you can follow your estimator to your house. So long on the days that you're calling us, we're going to avoid those transactions that the customer has to do to take the frustration. Every time that an insurance claim is lodged, we always encourage our staff. That person suffered a loss. Now, that loss to anyone could be minor. So Nigel, if you had a burst pipe, I might be thinking on the other end of the phone, it's just a pipe. What I don't know is that pipe's grown mold, and that mold's impacted your kids and it's made them all sick. Our job is to make that loss not seem as bad as what it is and assist you as quick as possible. So you're going to see a faster claims response. You're going to see your average life cycle go down, but you're also going to see things happen in quick succession or speed.
Thanks, Sam. You covered me well there. I appreciate it. Sam, it's the I kind of like the thought of that in terms of when you're waiting for a builder, you're waiting for any trades. I think one of the if you speak to anyone down the pub on a Friday and you ask about a builder, like generally they'll say to you, I don't know when they're arriving. They say they're going to reach sometime between 12 and 6, and that's generally not that helpful. And so yeah, it's being able to kind of see someone en route, know when they're going to be here, so you can plan your life around it. That sounds like a pretty great innovation. That sounds super interesting.
Yeah. Nigel, the number one frustration of any person out there that's dealt with a builder is when are they arriving? Stop giving me a 6-hour window. So by us building a solution by that, we're miles ahead of our competition, and we won't. Not only will we not get those calls, imagine you can actually watch. You could be up the pub yourself, having a steak, and you can come home when your builder arrives.
Absolutely love it, Sam. Thank you so much for your time today. I have learned an enormous amount, and I'm sure everyone at home has too. So thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely loved it.
Thank you so much, Nigel. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, look, we'll be cheering for InsureBuild from the sidelines, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the continued innovation that you guys continue to pump out. And so, congrats on what you're doing, and really looking forward to what's coming next.
Thank you very much.
So everybody at home, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you want to see Sam and my faces, you can jump over to YouTube and not listen to us on Spotify. You can see us doing this in real life. So head over to YouTube. The link will be in the description below. And as always, if you want to hear more from industry leaders who are pushing the boundaries in insurance, please do check out our other episodes of our podcast series, Building Tomorrow's Insurer. From Sam, from me, thank you so much and have a wonderful day.